When China announced the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, in 2013, it sounded like a game changer. A modern Silk Road, ports, railways, pipelines, power plants, connecting Asia, Europe and Africa. The promise? Boost trade, lift nations out of poverty and create a global economic family. For developing countries, it was a golden ticket, fast cash, no lectures and instant infrastructure. For China, it meant new markets, global influence and a showcase of its economic power. But a decade later, the dream has soured. Instead of prosperity, many countries face half-finished projects, spiraling debt and local backlash. The grand vision is now a patchwork of cautionary tales. Ribbon cuttings have turned into crisis meetings. So what went wrong? How did a trillion-dollar dream become a global warning about overpromising and under-delivering? Tonight, we'll dig into the Silk Road saga, where ambition met reality and what was left behind. Because when you try to build the future overnight, you risk creating a trail of expensive ruins. Why did China launch the BRI? It wasn't charity, it was strategy. China's economy was built on construction, but it was running out of things to build at home. State-owned giants needed new projects, so China exported its construction boom. The BRI created a global market for Chinese steel, cement and expertise. It kept factories humming and workers employed. There was also a security angle. China's trade relied on vulnerable shipping routes like the Strait of Malacca. The BRI aimed to build alternative pipelines, ports and railways and insurance policy for China's supply chains. And let's not forget the money. China was sitting on trillions in foreign reserves. Instead of parking it in US bonds, why not invest abroad, earn better returns and buy political influence? Every loan came with strings attached. Economic power turned into geopolitical leverage. The BRI was less about global harmony, more about solving China's own problems while expanding its reach. It was soft power backed by hard cash. But exporting ambition is a lot messier than exporting concrete. So, how much did China spend? Estimates hover around $1 trillion, a sum so huge it's hard to grasp. That's more than the Marshall Plan, even after inflation. The money flowed through Chinese state banks to over 150 countries, funding everything from railways in Laos to ports in Sri Lanka. For a while, it seemed like China's checkbook had no limit. At its peak, China was lending more to developing countries than the World Bank and IMF combined. The focus was speed: announce, fund, build, worry about the details later. But these weren't gifts, they were loans, often at higher interest rates and with secretive terms. Countries now face a tsunami of debt, with repayment deadlines looming. The initial euphoria has faded, replaced by the harsh reality of bills coming due. This wasn't aid, it was business, and risky business at that. The BRI's tidal wave of cash has left many nations struggling to stay afloat. The world's biggest infrastructure spree is now a global debt crisis, and the reckoning has begun. Where did all that money go? Many BRI projects became infamous white elephants, expensive, underused and unsustainable. Take Sri Lanka's Hambantota port. Built with over $1 billion in Chinese loans, it sits nearly empty, far from major shipping lanes. Unable to pay, Sri Lanka handed the port and surrounding land to China on a 99-year lease. In Montenegro, a $1 billion Chinese loan built a highway that starts in a village and ends in a forest. Unfinished, over budget, and nearly bankrupting the country. Pakistan's China-Pakistan economic corridor brought power plants and a new port, but left the country locked into costly contracts and mounting debt. Across the globe, the BRI is dotted with ghost ports, phantom highways and overpriced power plants. These projects promised prosperity but delivered debt and disappointment. They stand as monuments to poor planning and political vanity. The BRI's legacy is a landscape of gleaming, expensive and profoundly underused infrastructure. For many, the dream of development has become a nightmare of white elephants. The world's biggest building spree has left behind some of its biggest blunders. And the bill keeps growing. The question, who really benefited? Why did so many BRI projects fail? It's a mix of speed, secrecy and self-interest. Chinese banks rushed to lend, often skipping basic feasibility studies. Loan contracts were shrouded in secrecy, with terms hidden from the public and even from borrowing governments. Many deals required Chinese contractors, sidelining local businesses and fueling corruption. Host governments, often plagued by weak governance, saw the BRI as a chance for personal gain. Vanity projects and kickbacks took priority over real economic needs. China's policy of non-interference meant it rarely questioned corruption or human rights. The result? Massive loans for doomed projects, with citizens left to pick up the tab. This is the heart of the debt trap diplomacy accusation. Countries face a brutal choice: default and risk isolation, or hand over strategic assets to China. Whether intentional or not, the BRI's structure made defaults all too common, and many nations walked right into the trap. The BRI's failures aren't just numbers, they're human tragedies. Across Asia and Africa, Chinese-funded projects displaced families, often with little or no compensation. In Myanmar, the Myitsone Dam would have flooded villages and sacred sites, displacing thousands before public outcry halted it. In Laos and Indonesia, railways and industrial parks forced communities from their land. Promised jobs rarely materialized. Many contracts required Chinese labor, leaving locals sidelined. In Kenya and Zambia, resentment grew as Chinese crews did the work, and locals watched from the sidelines. When projects failed, it was ordinary people who suffered through austerity, inflation, and cuts to vital services. In Pakistan, debt led to harsh economic measures that hit the poorest hardest. In Zambia, Chinese debt contributed to a crippling default. The unfinished projects are daily reminders of promises broken and futures mortgaged. The true cost of the BRI is paid by those left behind, and the price is steep. The BRI's environmental toll is staggering. Projects bulldoze through rainforests, coral reefs, and habitats for endangered species. In Indonesia, the Batang Toru Dam threatens the last 800 Tapanuli orangutans with extinction. Many projects ignored environmental impact, prioritizing speed over sustainability. China financed hundreds of coal plants abroad, locking countries into decades of pollution. While China built renewables at home, it exported dirty energy abroad. From coral destruction in the Maldives to polluted rivers in Africa, the scars are everywhere. Environmental assessments were often skipped or ignored. The promise of growth justified irreversible damage to natural heritage. The real cost isn't just financial, it's in lost forests, extinct species, and polluted lands. The BRI's legacy is written in concrete and carbon, and the world is left to pick up the pieces. Facing global backlash and a mountain of bad loans, China is changing course. The era of endless spending is over. Welcome to BRI 2.0, small and beautiful projects. Big, risky infrastructure is out. Targeted, profitable investments are in. China now talks about green energy, digital infrastructure, and risk management. Lending has plummeted, and Beijing is pushing for more transparency, at least on paper. Economic pressures at home mean China can't be the world's ATM anymore. Defaults and debt renegotiations have damaged China's reputation as a reliable partner. Now China is forced to act more like a traditional lender, restructuring debt and cooperating with others. But is this real reform or just a rebrand? Many old problems, secrecy, preference for Chinese firms, still linger. The BRI is being reassessed, but its future remains uncertain. The world is watching to see if China can truly clean up its act. What's next for the BRI? It's too big to abandon, but the wild days are over. The future will be slower, more cautious, and focused on tech and green energy. For countries saddled with debt, the road ahead is tough. Decades of repayments and tough choices. The BRI's legacy is mixed, some progress, much distress. China has learned that building infrastructure is easy, building trust is hard. The backlash has hurt its global image and soft power ambitions. Now China spends more time managing debt and diplomatic fallout than celebrating successes. The BRI is a cautionary tale about the limits of ambition and the dangers of top-down development. True progress can't be imposed, it must be built with transparency and local consent. The road ahead is uncertain. The BRI may yet reinvent itself as small and beautiful, or it may collapse under the weight of its own mistakes. Either way, the world will be living with its consequences for years to come.